Hi, my name is Neal McNamara. I'm the editor of the Framingham Patch, and today we're going to be talking with Charlie Sisitsky, the challenger in the mayoral election. We're going to be talking to Charlie about. We're going to focus on kind of the future of Framingham and what could happen, I guess, under Sisitsky administration. How's it going, Charlie? How you doing today?
Going great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good, good. All right, well, I guess we'll just start it off here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is economic development. The first time I remember actually seeing you in person was in 2019 at the Economic Development Subcommittee of the City Council, where the Bancroft Loft developers were coming up, and that they had already started the project, but they wanted a tax break, a TIF. And I was actually pretty surprised to see that they didn't get it. Usually, developers they get a lot. They get TIFs, and obviously right after that, you left office, but the pandemic happened. Just a few months later, and then the apartment moratorium happened. So it's not like there was going to be a lot of development in Framingham anyway. But thinking back to that time in 2019, I just wanted to ask and see, what is going to be your philosophy when it comes to development in 2022 and beyond if
Well,
you were elected?
I've had a lot of experience with tax increment financing agreements throughout my term on the Board of Selectmen. We were very prolific about granting those under the right conditions, going back as far as Computer Associates when they came in for TIF, and we got them to agree to re-outfit the complete computer lab at the high school as part of the agreement. And so we know we've had a lot of experience with TIFs, and we know what they can do to help the community and what they can do to help the company as well. And in the case of the Bancroft project, normally when developers are looking for a TIF, they come in ahead of time and they put all their information on the table, and we go through it all and determine what they need and how much of a tax break they need. But in this case, the project had already been approved. It was already under construction. And it seemed to me and others on the city council that it was really more like a bailout than anything else, because they ran into issues that they didn't anticipate. And it sounded to me like they weren't going to make the profits that they were anticipating, and they were looking for the city to bail them out. And I was very disappointed that the mayor proposed that without really giving it a lot of thought. She just kind of rolled over and said, okay, if you want to do this, this is what I'll propose, and put it in the lap of the city council. And we didn't agree. And as a result, we said no. And the project is still going on. I think the project is just about complete, and they've started renting. And as far as I know, it's been a success.
Yeah, the
So
apartments are very expensive. They're two thousand
yeah,
dollars
yeah.
plus. They look really nice, but yeah, very expensive. Yeah,
But it kind of proves my point that this was a bailout for the developers to protect their profit and not to generate all the different jobs and other things that go along with a TIF. So I felt very comfortable with our position on that, and I still do.
well, is that? I mean, so if a developer came to you, if you become mayor, and he came to you in February and said, I want to build a bunch of apartments downtown. Well, I guess the better question is, what kind of development would you want to see come to Framingham in the next 4 years if you take office?
Well, first of all, with the TIFs, most of the TIFs under the state law are commercial or industrial. Residential ones are kind of an anomaly, and they have to be in a certain district designated as a development district. And that's how the apartment projects downtown came to fruition, because the town meeting had voted to put these in a special development district to make them eligible for the TIF under residential. But in terms of projects that I'd like to see, I think we need to get projects that are green projects that benefit the city, benefit people who work in the city, who live in the city, and provide good paying jobs and whatever other benefits that they can provide to us. Because don't forget, the TIF also has to be approved by the state. It's controlled by the state, and they have to adhere to certain regulations. But I'd be open to any project that where they can make a case that they need a tax increment financing package to make the project worthwhile and provide us with what we need in the city for good development.
Hmm. Well, are there any, I mean, are there parts of the city where you think, you know, could stand to benefit? I'm thinking about two things stand out to me. The old, I think it's an old, the old lumber yard or lumber mill over in Saxonville. And then there's,
Yeah,
you know, near the train station, that would be a great place. There's a couple parking lots right there that, you know, I think are, you know, not specifically targeted for anything, but, you know, those are the two areas I kind of think of, like, where you could definitely have some pretty big developments. I mean, what do you think about, what parts of the city do you think, I don't know, do you
well,
have your eye on?
you mentioned a state lumber property, and that's kind of a unique situation because the owner of that property signed up for a long-term lease with, I believe it was Stop and Shop, so they could protect their business in the area so that nobody else could build there to compete with them. And I don't know how many more years or months that agreement has to go, but um, it's really not on the table as a development site right now, as far as I can tell, until that agreement is up or Stop and Shop decides they want to do something different. I agree with you that downtown would be a nice area, anywhere along 135 to fix up and put in some development there, clean up the area. You know, every year when we watch the marathon run through Framingham, we kind of cringe at some of the sights we see as the camera trucks move down 135 heading to Natick and Wellesley and everything. And I always think that how nice it would be if we could get some really nice development going up in that area. And I would support that if it's the right kind of development and it fits in with what we want to see for the city.
Hmm. Do you, I mean, just personally, like, how do you feel about the way the developments, the newer ones downtown look? You know, the new one that opened on 135 there, I think last summer.
They're
Um,
huge projects, and I understand that even though they're expensive, they're renting pretty well.
yeah.
The original idea was for transit-oriented development projects to take advantage of the train station and its proximity to the trains. And that's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit because fewer people are commuting to Boston now to go to work. A lot of people are working from home. And in a sense, maybe some of the people that are renting these apartments are working from home in those apartments. But I don't see the activity and the volume of passengers using a train now to get back and forth to Boston.
Mm.
So we need to work on that. And we have to figure out, everybody has to figure out what the future is for the economy in terms of how people are going to work in the future.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, downtown Framingham it's an interesting place. You've got, I mean, huge draws, like, you know, there's good restaurants down there, obviously Jack's Abbey, but, you know, that it's kind of an exclusive place to live if you want to live right downtown. It's a little expensive, I guess, to live
Right.
in those new buildings.
Right.
But yeah, definitely, there's definitely a future there, obviously. I mean, you probably know that better than anyone else. But well, I guess speaking of downtown on the south side, I wanted to kind of switch to education. And I think, you know, the south side school, everybody, a lot of people, you know, are talking about how that's going to come to fruition and everything like that. But, you know, I just wanted to ask you, like, as if you were mayor, you know, what's your, I guess, what would be your, like, direction you would want to go with schools with your, you know, your role on the school committee? Obviously not a voting member, but you would be there.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the mayor's main role is to propose a budget, a citywide budget, not just for schools, but for the town as a whole. And you got to, put all your priorities on the table and figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Um, we've been behind for a long time about our capital improvements, especially schools and school roofs, and even the operating budget. We really are kind of falling behind, and luckily we've been bailed out by the Chapter 70 money from the state. But there's still some equity issues with the schools, and one of those big equity issues, I believe, is the fact that we don't have enough Southside schools, modern ones that like the Fuller School that we just built. And there's a lot of kids that live on the South Side and could walk to a neighborhood school if we built a first-class school in that area. And that's what I'm advocating for. And everybody I've talked to in all the different neighborhoods agree with that. They think it's a real equity issue. And if we get the kids to start walking to neighborhood schools, we can get rid of our transportation, our busing issues with getting kids to school. And I mean, it's a shame when these elementary school age kids are riding a bus hours a day back and forth from home to school and back and forth. And it's not fair to the kids. It's not a good situation. And we need to do better on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the school bus, a lot of people have talked about the school buses being kind of a traffic problem around the city too. So like what, is there any, like, I don't know, budget initiative as the person who's going to be shaping the budget? Are there any like funding areas that you have ideas about right now that you can talk about?
Nothing specific right now. One of the first things I want to do is, after I'm elected mayor, is to sit down with the school superintendent, the school committee, and talk about their issues. We have a lot of different funding issues with the schools in terms of special needs, special education, and it gets very expensive when we have to provide services like out of district services for certain students that need our help. And that gets very expensive, and we have to be able to plan for that. And we can't consider that part of the budget a surplus part of the budget if it doesn't get spent any one year. We have to plan for how that money is going to get spent and when and if it's ever going to be needed. So that's one of the issues that I want to discuss with the superintendent, is how we go about trying to rein in those costs and what we can do to provide the services perhaps in-house so that we don't have to spend a lot of money to pay out of town tuitions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and apart from those issues, I mean, when you talk to voters, like, is there anything else that you're hearing that they, problems that they have with schools or things that they, want to see changed?
Well, the busing has been a big issue, and it's not just Framingham; it's all over. The busing companies are hurting. They can't, and it's just like everything else we're hearing about. They can't get people to work. They can't get drivers, get trained drivers, and what the governor has done with the National Guard has been a help, but where there's limitations on doing that. But I think by and large, the busing situation and getting kids to school on time and getting them picked up and dropped off, that's a big issue with the people. Mm-hmm. One of the other issues is, I heard this a lot too on the campaign trail, is the condition of our fields and the ability to use the fields when they're needed, and how we're going to allocate our resources to the fields and getting kids back and forth to their games or after school games. That's an issue. Mm-hmm. Luckily, we had the ability. I was the first chairman of the Fuller School Building Committee, and luckily we had the foresight to provide for 2 turf fields at the new school, so that'll help a lot in terms of providing additional usable fields for the school kids.
Yeah, it's interesting. I forgot you were on the Fuller. So, so when did you join when did the Fuller process, I guess, start?
Well, I was on the Board of Selectmen and Cheryl Tully Stoll was the chairman. And she asked me if I'd be willing to be the selectman's representative to the committee because they had a certain block of people that they had to fill from different categories. And I said, sure, I'd love to. I worked on municipal building projects before in Natick and totally familiar with that. And I was thrilled to be asked to do it. And I was the first chairman until I got elected to the city council. And then I felt it was going to be too much time that I'd have to spend on the city council. So I offered to step down and Dave Miles took over.
Okay. But like, so I guess the point being though, you joined that committee when Framingham was a town and Fuller just opened last month. So it's a long
Right.
process.
It's a
So
long
yeah.
process.
So anyone
Yeah.
who's anticipating a Southside school is, it could be 6
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And guess what? We're still meeting. The committee still meets to
Yeah.
finalize the punch list items and everything else. But yeah, we're still meeting.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I'm very proud of the fact that that building opened on time, under budget,
Mhm.
and it's a beautiful school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's state of the art. It's just unbelievable what we've provided for the kids in this building.
And yeah, I mean, once under construction, I think that you broke ground in spring 2019. So it didn't take that long to build it, to actually build it. It was everything else kind of that
But when you
MSBA and everything.
factor in the pandemic and the restrictions on people wearing masks and being vaccinated and keeping their distance from everybody, it was a very difficult situation to continue working. And I don't think they lost one day out of the
Yeah.
whole schedule.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, well, I guess so. Speaking of kids in the future, I guess kind of one of the things I wanted to cover is more of a philosophical thing. Is what do you think Framingham should be? I guess because if you think about the region, if you think about the area between Worcester and Boston, those two cities have they're kind of larger cities, obviously, so they're bigger than Framingham. They have their own, they're kind of their own hubs. Then you have a city like Framingham or similar places, Marlborough, North Shore communities that are kind of they're pretty big, but they're also separate from Boston, separate from Worcester. So what do you think Framingham's role should be here in the region?
Well, I think Framingham is really we have been, and I hope we can continue to be, kind of the center of that whole geographic area in terms of being an economic engine for the region. Don't forget, we've got 2 turnpike entrances in Framingham, which is very unusual. We have very good infrastructure in terms of water, sewer over the years that's been built up. And we provide a lot of good services. And we're a very diverse community in terms of the people that live here and in terms of housing types. And we offer a lot to a lot of people. And it's, in my opinion, it's a very desirable place to be, to live. And excuse me. And I would like to continue to be play that role.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, there definitely, obviously, Framingham has its role nearby, there's a hub for Metro West. But do you think that would you want to see Framingham become more closer to a Boston, more of almost like a neighborhood of Boston, or I don't know, is that just not desirable? Is that not something you would want?
I don't think that's necessary for the community to be successful. I think we want to have our own identity, and we want to do things that will draw people here and make them want to live here and work here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any benefit to being considered to be a neighborhood of Boston. That's not for us.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, and so kind of one of the things about being kind of a larger community here is that the cost of housing it's pretty big and it's pretty high in Framingham. Not only rents, but also just if you want to buy a single family home, you need at least $500,000, probably more. I mean, is there anything that you could see doing to bring that, to reduce that, to make Framingham even more attractive to young families, maybe ones that are not as wealthy as they need to be right now.
Yeah, well, for a long time, there was a hue and cry about providing over 55 housing, and we didn't have any. And then not, I don't want to say the floodgates open, but a lot of developments came along for over 55. And what that does is that it frees up larger homes where there's empty nesters living. These people can move into a condominium, over 55 condominium, and then put their house on the market, and that opens up homes for younger families. So, and hopefully that becomes affordable to do it that way, rather than relying on new construction all the time for new housing. Mm-hmm. So I think by opening it up and encouraging people to live in over 55 communities, or even apartments, it frees up the housing market for newer families to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we saw it in the census, Framingham, that Framingham grew by about 4,000 people. It's probably not exactly accurate, just because census numbers never are. But Framingham could conceivably in another 10 years break 80,000 people. I mean, is that something? Are you like excited about that? Do you think like, oh, that'd be great if in 10 years Framingham was 10,000 people bigger? Or is that something you kind of want Framingham to stay?
I don't know what that really means. If you say, well, Framingham's 80,000 instead of 70,000, I think it's more about the quality of life, the services we can provide, and the schools. I mean, we don't want to overburden our schools and our infrastructure. People complain now about the traffic through all the neighborhoods, and by just growing without any real planning, that's not a solution to anything. So we need to consider the impacts of development around the city and what it's going to create in the neighborhoods, and make sure that we do the planning the right way so that these projects benefit this community and not burden it any more than it is already.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, speaking of the future, November 2nd is just a few days away. Is there anything that in closing that you'd like to say to voters, or anything they should know about you?
It's, we've kept saying it all along. I bring 40 years of professional municipal experience to the table. I've had all this background in municipal government, both in Framingham and outside Framingham. I know how communities work. I know the synergy between different departments, how the different employees work together. I can start on day one. There's no learning curve needed for me, because I don't profess to have all the answers, and I expect to surround myself with people that can help and give me advice, and I'm willing to take advice and listen to anybody who wants to talk to me. But I'm certain that I'm capable of doing the job on day one and getting things done. We got a lot of work to do to catch up from the past 4 years of mismanagement, but it's not something that we can't do. And just in closing on that question, I just would ask people to consider voting for me on Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Well, Charlie, thank you for talking with us. And depending on what happens Tuesday, we may not be talking more. Maybe you'll run for another office in the future. If not, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I'll be here.
I'm sure you will. All right. Well, happy Halloween, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay. See you later.